I want you to pause and ask yourself, am I adapting to their comfortability? And in that adaptation, am I abandoning what I want? It's incredibly important for both parties to express their wants and their needs and to provide for those wants and needs as much as we can without it being at the expense of ourselves. But when you begin to negotiate down your needs to fit your partner's comfortability and you're not getting what you want more of the time, that is sign number one. It's time to leave. Well, welcome to Dating Deja Vu, the podcast where we talk about your patterns, your pitfalls, and personal growth in modern dating. I'm your host, Christina Hathaway, marriage and family therapist and dating and relationship expert. If your dating and love life looks a lot of bit of the same, it might be deja vu, but it also might be you. So let's figure it out together. What's up, Deja Crew? Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to those coming over from TikTok. We've had such a great flood of new followers and people liking our posts, saving the posts. So when I say us, myself and my assistant who has been doing all of the background work. So that's who us is. If you haven't already, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Dating Deja Vu. And I'd post a lot of clips from the podcast, but also added educational like carousels and posts and things like that. So definitely want to give it a follow if you haven't already. All right, today we are talking about when it's time to walk away. We're not talking about it when it's obvious. I'm talking about it when it's very subtle. I'm not talking about when someone is awful, right? But rather when someone is good enough to kind of keep us around or keep us confused on what we should do. And you end up feeling like you're going crazy because you continually second guess yourself. You feel like, but what if this could change, that could change. And most of the time in my experience, what is actually happening is you're just very comfortable with tolerating the relationship and the person and the things that are happening. And you realize like these aren't things I actually signed up for. But again, you're tolerating it because it's comfortable. So we're going to talk about the 10 signs that it's time to leave, even if nothing explosive has happened. Because let's face it, some relationships just end. And it could be for whatever reasons. It could be because you've outgrown each other. It could be that one person has decided they want something different in regards to important things like children or career or where they want to live or whatever that looks like. So we're going to talk about the 10 signs that it's time to leave, even if nothing explosive has happened. Relationships end, and there doesn't have to be this big, explosive, hurtful thing. Now, yes, all relationships are going to end in hurt if you didn't realize that. Unless you die together or you die first, right? So someone's going to end up hurt on the other end. And that's a reality of any relationship. However, if we are putting another person's feelings before our own and staying in something that doesn't make us feel good, then that is incredibly codependent, and it's going to cost us a healthy relationship in the future, because the longer we stay with the one that is not for us, the longer we take to find the person who is. So sign number one is you're constantly negotiating your needs down. If you find yourself getting caught in things like, well, I guess I don't need communication that much, or one date night a month is fine, or having sex once every 6 months, like that's okay. That's normal, right? When really you want to have sex every week. You want to go on date night twice a month. You want to communicate at least once a week to check in, right? That's what you want. But you keep kind of negotiating your needs down, or you're saying, maybe I'm asking for too much, right? I want you to pause and ask yourself, am I adapting to their comfortability? And in that adaptation, am I abandoning what I want? It's incredibly important for both parties to express their wants and their needs and to provide for those wants and needs as much as we can without it being at the expense of ourselves. But when you begin to negotiate down your needs to fit your partner's comfortability, and you're not getting what you want more of the time, that is sign number one. It's time to leave. Okay. Sign number two, your body is more anxious than it is excited. Butterflies are one thing, and butterflies are not going to last. Like I've been with my husband for 10 years, and I get butterflies with him in different reasons now. It's kind of funny. I get butterflies when he's doing something like that maybe we talked about him doing, and then I see him doing it. Like I get butterflies then. But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the pit in your stomach, girl or guy, the tightness in your chest, the tightness in your shoulders. That was me, or just that obsessive loop. And obviously, we need to make sure it's not something else beyond the relationship. So if it's work, if it's family, something like that. But if it's not, and you realize like, my nervous system is trying to tell me something in this relationship. Like I'm always anxious. I'm constantly questioning things. And like we talked about in number one, I'm constantly questioning myself and my needs. And it's caused me to be more anxious than I ever have. I think about Paige DeSorbo in Summer House, where she had to go sleep in another room because she was so anxious. And what was happening? She was in this confusion of what do I do next in this relationship that doesn't feel right for me. And that is a perfect example of the body being like, hey, yo, we don't like this. This doesn't feel comfortable. We've experienced this relationship as a threat or a stressor. We no longer experience it as a stress relief. We don't experience it as safe. Okay. So that's sign number two. Sign number three is that you're constantly walking on eggshells around this person. Like you are walking in a field of bombs and you're going to step on them at any second, right? This causes people to edit themselves and like not bring up subjects that might like put off or set off, I should say, their partner. And this could be those important conversations about where the relationship is going, what you need, how you've not been asking for your needs, how you are anxious all the time. And if you don't have a partner, like a true partner, someone who wants to hear and see you and create space for you, or even worse, they put you down or become the victim, then it's going to feel like you can't talk. You have to kind of edit what you bring up because you don't want to set them off. And setting them off doesn't always look like rage. It could be minimizing your feelings, avoiding a conversation, and putting themselves in the victim role or telling you you're being crazy, right? Or even worse, they could agree and then not do it. That's the one. That's the one that gets you. So that is number three. On number three, we need, shouldn't have like a strategy or tactic when it comes to talking to our partner. And we should be able to just speak freely, because that's really what, again, intimacy, into me, you see is. Sign number four is you're clinging to potential rather than reality. We talk about this all the time on this podcast. We focus on the fantasy instead of the facts, or we focus on the fears instead of the facts. You're in love with this future self of yours that doesn't exist with this person currently. The version that might go to therapy, the version that might want to work out with you, the version that might be ready for marriage, right? You're obsessed with it. The problem with that, though, is it's not what's happening now. And the facts of what's happening now don't match up with that future self or that fantasy self of yours. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because we want that. We want our relationships to evolve into that. And especially when we've put years, maybe even decades worth of our energy into these relationships. So we fantasize and fantasize. I did this in a relationship for 3 years. I wanted this person to be who I needed them to be. I was trying to mold him into being that, and he hasn't to this day become that person from what I know. We've got to focus on the facts, the person in front of us, the relationship in front of us. That's not to say relationships can't grow and get better. However, there's a certain threshold. And if that person's not willing to change, then what are we doing? Sign number 5 is your boundaries are getting blurry. Okay. So this is more for my girlies and guys out there in a situationship where you told yourself, like, I would not do a casual thing again. I would not allow someone to love bomb me again or breadcrumb me again. But here we are back in that gray zone of, I hate this, but this seems the only way to keep somebody around. If you set a boundary for yourself about what a relationship looks like to you, and that includes a commitment, that includes being closed off to anybody else, and you find yourself working outside of those boundaries, it is time to leave that. Now, when I first wrote these notes, I was really thinking about long-term relationships, but short-term too. I mean, I was just watching the show Sneaky Links, and I'll probably do a deja vu on that, Love Island, and what's the other one that I just watched? There's another one, all dating shows. So stay tuned for that. But in the Sneaky Links, it's basically about this exact thing, that they have these booty calls that came to them at night. They've been hooking up these people for years and never actually spent time to get to know them. And these kind of half relationships, right? Getting their sexual needs met, maybe even just connection met, but not understanding the person on a personal level, is actually what kept them from meeting new people and meeting their potential partners. So, interesting show. Haven't finished it yet. Okay, number 6, you do more emotional labor than they do. I see this often. You initiate the hard talks, you regulate the relationship, you explain, you teach, you overclarify, you're reading the books, you're wanting them to read the books, you're listening to the podcast, you send the podcast to them. That's not intimacy. That's like teacher student, right? That's professor. And you should not be the professor in a relationship. What needs to happen there is to ask if they're willing to do that work together. And what I mean by together is maybe you find a book and then he or she finds a book, right? And when you're in therapy, I highly suggest, if you're doing coaching like I do or therapy, you see the same therapist individually and then together. Why? Because you need to figure out your shit. You need to figure out why you do the things you do, and then help each other understand that and how to show up for each other. So when it comes to you bearing all the emotional labor, it's exhausting. You begin to resent your partner because you're putting in all the work, and that might be a sign it's time to leave. Sign number 7, you keep checking with, you keep checking with other people to validate how you feel. You're screenshotting the texts and sending it to the friends, like, make sure I'm not overreacting, or make this make sense for me, right? You know it. You know who I'm talking to. You are asking people for permission. You're asking people if your feelings are valid. You're just in such a confused place that you are literally turning to everyone else rather than trusting your gut and yourself. And I get it. It's going to suck. But if your body is telling you this, so much so that you're going around asking everyone about it, that could be a sign it's time to leave. Number 8, you no longer feel like yourself around them. You feel like you're quieter. You're kind of shrinking, right? You're very careful with how you act. Obviously, like we talked about, you're tiptoeing around them, walking on eggshells. You're minimizing your needs. You're minimizing your boundaries. You're just second guessing yourself, right? And like I just talked about, you're not listening to your true instincts and your gut and what you want. Your humor, your boldness, that light in yourself is dull. It's dull around your partner. Your light should shine. I have to say something about this because I have been going through a really tough time the past 6 months. And my husband left on a business trip this morning. And when we not first started dating, like the first 3 years of our relationship, whenever he'd go on this trip, because he does it like once a quarter, I leave him little notes in his suitcase. And today it popped in my head, like, I'm going to leave him a note in his suitcase because he lets my light shine, even if I can't even see my own light. He will figure out whatever ways he can to help me be my best, even when my best isn't my best, if that makes sense. If I have 20% to give, he's going to make sure that I shine in that 20%, and by doing things to help me in my 20%. And that is something I've never experienced before, And even 10 years in, like it makes me a little emotional if you guys aren't watching on YouTube and getting a little teary-eyed because it's a new like discovery in our relationship. And I wrote him that note and I put it in his little thing. So you do not want to be that dull light in your relationship. You want to shine and find ways that they're helping you. Be yourself. Be vulnerable. I'm going to have a whole episode coming up about intimacy and what it truly is and what it looks like in a healthy relationship. So stay tuned for that. Okay, sign number 9 is they like the idea of you more than the reality of you. When they got a relationship with you, they were drawn to your independence, but now they criticize you or guilt trip you for needing your space, right? They were drawn to the fact that you're super social, but then they get super jealous about you talking to a guy. I'm incredibly social. My husband knows that I will straight up start doing sessions with people if we're out and about. It's kind of hilarious. He's secure though, but if they're insecure with that, they think, oh, she's so great. She's so social. But then they start getting jealous about that. They may even say they want more depth, more conversation. But when you start chatting with them about it, they shut down. They're not connected to you, to who you are, to your characteristics, your strengths, your weaknesses, your needs, your wants. They're just consumed by a version of you they think or thought would meet their needs, but in all reality, they weren't ready for you. And sign number 10, the idea of leaving brings relief, not fear. If you're honest, the fantasy of not being with this person anymore feels lighter. When it feels like the better choice, and it might be, I want to tell you something. If you're 60-40, leave 50-50 even. I don't see a world where we get to the point of wanting to leave that with the right coaching and therapy, could we reverse that? Yes. But oftentimes what I see is that we don't intervene early enough. And that resentment is so fucking thick that it's very hard to break down that wall. And I'm just being straight up with you guys. And I have these conversations with clients. Sometimes they've gone decades with these things, this list that they've been doing or not doing. And then they come see me and say, help. And I'm just sitting there chipping away at that rock with them. But sometimes it is better to leave. If it feels like relief is on the other side of that, then yes, that is the time to leave. So you don't have to wait until it's unbearable to choose to leave someone. You don't need permission to leave something that no longer aligns with you, especially if it's draining your quality of life. And I want you to think, I know it's hard and being alone seems scary and thinking about dating again is so overwhelming. I get that. Let's not even focus on that right now. Let's focus on your heart. Let's focus on you and validate that you no longer can handle this relationship and we're just going to take care of you. We're not going to worry about that future shit. That's future shit. We need to take care of you right now. And you right now needs to leave this relationship. Leaving isn't always this dramatic thing, of course. But staying in a relationship that you're not supposed to be in, that's not only dramatic, it can be very much toxic. So I want you to take a few minutes after this episode and I want you to write down what parts of this relationship feel like work, what parts feel like you are disappearing from yourself, and what would life look like if I left? Not that you would fall apart. Let's keep that out of here. But what if I finally opened up or reconnected to myself? So I want you to write that down. Ira, we can also use it as a carousel. So if this hit home for you, I hope you take what I've said into your decision making. If you have that friend that needs to hear this, please send this podcast over to them. If you haven't already, make sure to follow us wherever you're listening or watching, whether that's YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, I want to remind you, it might be deja vu, but it also might be you. Talk to you next time.